Okay, great. Well, thank you all again for joining us. I just wanted to go ahead and get started. But so today we're going to be showing off one of our newest tools at Booz Allen. It's called Polaris. It is an integrated cost and schedule risk analysis tool. Polaris has been around since about 2009. We actually developed it for NASA. So in 2009, NASA was seeing just massive cost and schedule growth across their portfolio of programs. They actually came in and talked to us, Booz Allen, to say, hey, we're seeing this huge cost and schedule growth across all of our programs. We know that you all do software development. We also know that you have a proven track record in, program analysis and program management. And, we'd really like you to come in and take a look at our portfolio projects and also take a look at maybe figuring out how to do an integrated cost and schedule risk analysis for us. A lot of this came from a policy that NASA came up with called the Joint Confidence Level Policy. And this policy actually was taking all of the schedules and cost estimates and integrating them, and then taking the risk registers and integrating those as well to kind of then see what all this cost and schedule growth was costing them over all the different projects in the portfolio. Booz Allen came in. We actually developed Polaris from a lot of their requirements, and actually took that and then kind of ran with it. So what we found is that by implementing not only this joint confidence level policy of doing integrated cost and schedule risk analysis, but along with Polaris, within about 3 years, NASA was able to kind of curb that cost and schedule growth by about 66%. NASA now mandates that Polaris or this type of analysis is performed on all of their projects, for all of their portfolios, for all of their projects across their portfolio, and it's really started to take a foothold within the federal government as well as commercial industry. The one thing is that Polaris is very scalable. There's a lot of different things that you can do with the tool from a risk analysis perspective, but also just from a decision analytics perspective. You can do schedule risk analysis. You can do the fully integrated cost and schedule risk analysis. You can use it to do what-if analysis. There's a lot of different things you can do with the tool. And from that aspect, you can use it on huge projects, smaller projects. You can use an entire program IMS. You can do a higher level analysis level schedule. There's a lot of different ways that you can use this tool, as well as not only using it with your existing project controls artifacts, but it also makes everything kind of better overall. We kind of use 4 pillars on how we use Polaris in different organizations. The first thing we do is we go in and we sit with an organization. We kind of integrate all the different project controls. What you're going to see here is that we're going to take the cost estimates, we're going to take schedules, we're going to take the risk register, and we're going to integrate that all into one model. What this really does, it kind of gives you a cohesive view of all the different project controls disciplines. This also has a side benefit of also looking at the different project controls functions to say, hey, what does your schedule look like? Is it in good shape? Does it pass the DCMA standards? Does it pass the CPM standards? Your cost estimates, do your cost WBS and your schedule WBS, does all that information match? The last piece of it is really looking at that risk register. And when we think of risk, we kind of look at risk at kind of a higher level. It's kind of an overarching thing for the project. What this really does is this is actually it's really just a quantitative risk analysis. We actually look at risk, we quantify those risks, we then map them to the individual tasks within the schedule, and we kind of look at that to say, what's really driving risk within our project? Where can we take that information to map into individual tasks, put some sort of impact associated with that, and really see what's driving the cost and schedule issues within our project. Polaris is completely compatible with Primavera P6 and Microsoft Project, so primarily the 2 PM softwares out there that most project managers use to manage their different projects. We also have an Excel template that allows you to write a lot of different types of data. So if you're keeping your risk register in another tool, say an active risk manager, or maybe you're just keeping it in another Excel file, we can take all that information and we can put it into this Excel sheet, and it allows you to kind of share that information around with other colleagues. It also allows you just to kind of keep that on the side and load it into the tool whenever you're ready to do that. The other thing is that this type of tool really facilitates communication. You're going to bring all the different people from your schedule, your cost, and your risk areas all into the same room. They're going to help you integrate all this information in the model. You're going to have really just great conversations back and forth, not only while you're building the model, but prior to that with just kind of integrating all the information together. And the conversations that you're going to have from doing this type of analysis are invaluable. I've done multiple risk workshops using this tool, and the conversations I think are the biggest benefit. It builds not only better project controls, it also just builds better team cohesiveness, and then it just enhances communication, which is just a huge benefit for any project. Once we've kind of taken all this information, we then go ahead and we can do the prediction portion. So we take all that information, we put it into one model, and then we basically run a Monte Carlo simulation. At its heart, the Monte Carlo simulation tool, but it has some really neat twists to it. The fact that it's a very, very, very rapid Monte Carlo analysis. When I say that, it's an order of magnitude faster than any other tool out there. And what that allows us to do is to do real-time analysis. We can basically make changes on the fly, do anything we want within the model, press run, and it runs it very, very rapidly. And I'll show you more of that here in the demo here in a couple minutes. The next feature is after we predict, we've kind of looked at where all those future cost and schedule growth is. We can really go through and analyze all the different areas within the analysis to where what's driving cost and schedule. What types of things are causing this particular area to slip. What is really driving cost? There's also some other types of analysis features that I'm going to show you today that are unique to Polaris. We also have some outputs that allow you to kind of look at risk as more of like a days and dollars versus a sensitivity analysis, which traditionally is what risk analysis is. We have some different analysis features within the tool that allow project managers to look at that information as more of like this is how much a risk may cost you in days, this is how much it may cost you in dollars. If you violate particular rules, what does a cost of delay going to cost me, or liquidated damage cost me? There's some really neat analysis features within the tool that I'm going to show you here in a couple minutes. The last piece is the mitigation features. We have some really neat mitigation options where we have the ability to do basically like distribution analyzing, where if you want to look at a project S-curve or if you want to look at different risk mitigation options, you can actually go through, have like, let's say a baseline, which is coming out of the initial risk register, and then you say, okay, well, what if I want to mitigate different things? How much is that mitigation going to cost me? All that information you can actually model within the tool, and you can look at what additional mitigation scenarios are costing you, what they may actually benefit, what additional opportunities may have. There's a lot of different things inside the tool that you can do from a mitigation perspective to really put your projects back on track and to really help and show, what else can we do and how can we make our project better. So one of the things we like here is these are some examples of some different ways that we've used Polaris. The first one here, obviously, is a NASA project. They're one of our biggest clients. They've been a huge champion for this particular tool. The biggest thing for NASA is launch windows. Little pieces and parts may delay the schedule hugely, and when your launch window is really small for getting something to Mars or getting something up to let's say land on an asteroid per se, risk analysis is really, really important to do that in the early part of the project. Basically, they came in, they did a risk analysis. The project was completed on time and on cost. They took a small little instrument out, which would have caused a 2-year mission delay. This type of analysis allows you to kind of look at that. So if you have very, very critical, time-critical projects, this type of analysis just does amazing things when it comes to kind of looking at, what are the things driving my project, what is driving schedule, if I can remove things and take things out, how is that going to benefit me? Kind of lets you play the trade-off analysis and what-if analysis in a very, very rapid, very easy way. The Department of Defense also uses this pretty heavily. They actually see that minor risks in the risk register were going to delay the entire project. They went through, they could do a risk burn down. Going through the risk register pretty rapidly, they say, well, we can spend a little bit of money here and pretty much completely mitigate these things. And by doing that, the cost and schedule growth was completely averted. The risks were labeled as low likelihood, low consequence. But in reality, when they actually ran the analysis, it became very apparent that these very low likelihood, low consequence risks were really driving out schedule. We are doing a lot of things in the commercial oil and gas space. That's primarily where I spend a lot of my time. So we actually have quite a few companies in the oil and gas space that are using Polaris on their day-to-day projects. It's kind of neat to see just the different uses across. Most of them are doing schedule risk analysis. We have a few clients that are doing the fully integrated cost and schedule risk analysis, using Polaris. And they've really found some neat things while they've been doing the analysis. If y'all have more questions about that, I can gladly, we can talk more about that later. Before I go into kind of different ways you can get it, I really want to go over and show you kind of a demo of the software. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this to the side and bring this up. And okay. And so Polaris, when it comes out of the box, this is a fairly simplistic analysis of an offshore production platform for the oil and gas industry. Whenever we import things into the model, and give me 1 second for the screen to come up, you'll see here that, like I said, we're fully compatible with Microsoft Project, Primavera P6. We also offer the option for folks that are coming out of Primavera or PRA, the option to export their information to an XCR file. We can import that as well. Just makes it a little bit easier to jump from a legacy tool into a new tool. We also have this underlying Excel file, which has a lot of different information in it. You can see here that you can write uncertainty information. You can bring risk register information in. We have lots of different ways to model costs around resource costs, resource usage. There's a lot of different things that you can model within the tool. We also have the ability to do cost loaded schedules. So you can actually, let's say you don't want to actually do a resource loaded schedule, but you're very interested in mapping the cost in. Polaris allows you to do some really neat things around like cost loading a model. We've actually developed some things working with the oil and gas industry to really make it easier for analysts to bring costs over from their cost estimate into their actual risk analysis model to see, if I want to do the fully integrated cost and schedule risk model, where are my costs going to show up? What particular areas of my project are going to show up? So when you initially open up the tool, it looks a lot like most scheduling software. You're going to have kind of the information over here. There's lots of different columns of the information that would be probably more pertinent to schedule. You'll see over here, it kind of looks like a typical Gantt. Right here, you can see all the simulation details. So we bring in all the calendars from the different schedule files. If you want to assign different categories within the model, there's a lot of different things you can do associated with categories by filtering information. If you want to assign different types of risks, different types of, escalation costs associated with materials. There's a lot of different things you can do within categories. You have the ability to correlate just about anything within the model from tasks to resources. This really gets into some of the more advanced areas. The cost estimate is actually a really neat feature. This is actually one of the things that nobody else really does within the industry. Is that this allows you to actually you can load things at the highest level. So if you just want to look at total project costs, you could say, okay, I want to divide my two costs, so time independent and time dependent costs. Time independent being, like your material costs, and time dependent costs being like your labor and equipment. So on a construction project, time independent would be like, let's say concrete, and time dependent would be like, all your labor, all your field labor, and maybe some of the equipment that you're running. So you have cranes and things like that. You could load that at a top level and get kind of a quick kind of, estimate on what you think your costs are going to be for the whole project. You can also do this at a much, much lower level by assigning all that individual cost to individual tasks to the schedule. So by doing that, you can actually click here. We can add any one of those things to the different areas of the schedule. This cost is a lay feature. So for those of you that are very familiar with liquidated damages, we had a EPC contractor that was very interested in doing this type of analysis. This is a really, really neat analysis. You can do all kinds of different things here. You can look at your liquidated damage exposure. You can look at the cost of project extension. You can look at just, if I want to overrun a cost for a particular date that's associated with the contract, that may not be a liquidated damage, it just may be a cost to me or an owner cost. You can do that type of analysis in here, and no other tool out there does this. Inflation, escalation costs, so you can do inflation costs if you know that your project's going to be 2% more expensive every year. If you want to assign those particular things to particular resources, so if you know that steel costs are going to go up by 5% next year, you can assign that type of information and really do a detailed estimate on where you think your costs are going to go. We have an area for probabilistic calendars, weather modeling per se. Let's say if you have particular times of the year that you operate in a particular environment, so like let's say the North Sea. If you're building out in the North Sea, there's certain times of the year that the wave heights are too high, you can't operate out there. You can put those types of calendars in, and you can model, if you have things that are, particularly critical that may fall into those windows, this would show you where your exposure is associated with that. We bring in all the resources. If you resource load your schedule in, P6 or Microsoft Project, we'll bring all that information in. This particular schedule was resource loaded. Like I said, we think of things in time dependent and time independent costs. Like I said, all your labor is going to be time dependent. Some of your materials. So we have here we go, procurement, so your materials, time independent. Going through here, the next thing is the risk register. We have two different methodologies that we look at from a risk perspective. We have discrete, which is kind of looking at as like you have, a risk, probability of occurrence, you have an impact or multiple different impacts attached, and you have some sort of, known impact. It's going to be 10, 50, or 100 days. There might be a cash impact here or an additional resource impact that you may have associated with this particular risk occurring. And we know that, I know that it's going to be over from 10 to 100 days. For those folks that may not have a really good grasp or may just not, they just don't know, they really maybe think better in percentages, the driver methodology is more of a multiplicative way of looking at things. So whereas discrete tends to be like actual numbers and actual dollars, the driver methodology actually goes even a step further. This is actually a methodology developed by Dr. David Hewlett. He'll actually be out in San Diego too, I think, teaching one of the courses out there. If you have the opportunity to hear him speak, he's a great guy. So this particular methodology actually goes through to say that, this is multiplicative. It's a risk of 40% of something happening. It may be a little bit positive, it may be a little bit negative. So what's saying here is that this particular task, the duration is going to be multiplied by 0.9, 1.1, or 1.2. You could also do this as in percentages, if that was easier for you to understand, 90%, 110%, 120%. So there's a lot of different ways to load risk down into the tool. Simulation options kind of talks more about the Monte Carlo simulation. The last piece is templated uncertainty. So there's a lot of different ways to put uncertainty into the model. And the way that we think of that is that there's risk. So those are, known unknowns, things that are in the risk register that are going to happen. And then there's just pure uncertainty. So we have, things where like, okay, uncertainty, this task may take anywhere from 5 to 20 days, and I want to assign that. Or maybe a percentage based off, past project data. I know that, past projects are coming in 5% early, likely they're going to be 5% late, or they could be anywhere from, 10 to 20% late. You can come in here and put this type of information. This is also really a great way of going through and, quickly checking the schedule health of the particular model that you're bringing in. Is you can actually put an uncertainty in here, run the analysis real quick, and just see if the schedule flips or not. So going back to the home screen, you'll see here that I've got some Gantt options turned on. The first thing you see out of the box here is that you've got all these little dots up here. These actually represent the risk timeline. So that's just showing you where the risks are occurring. What's great about this is it very rapidly tells you what years you need to focus on. This particular project, 2016, you've got a lot of risk occurring. So very quickly you may say, do I really need to take a look at maybe my risk register and where these things are assigned? Is there other places that these risks need to be assigned to? Or is 2016 just going to be a really busy year for me as a project manager around managing all these risks? The next thing you can see here is that you can see the little flags associated with the individual activities. If you hover over that information, that's risks that have been attached to these particular activities. And the tasks that are outlined in red here are actually showing the deterministic or planned critical path. This is actually a really quick way to do a critical path analysis on your project. You can look here and see, well, all these projects here are on the critical path. Those are the ones that I definitely need to pay attention to when managing my project. So I do want to show you one thing. We do have a health check. Probably should have shown you this first. This is kind of a quick, it's a DCMA 14-point assessment for those of you that have used schedule health assessment tools. This is a pretty quick way to go in and see, does your schedule meet particular metrics? Will it pass the DCMA 14-point assessment? Can I run a risk analysis on it? It's also just a good way just to kind of, if you're building a schedule, just to load it in and double check. I use this all the time when I'm building schedules. Just another little feature on board. So with this particular model, we've got cost loaded into it from resources. We've loaded a risk register. We've kind of taken an initial look at it. It pretty much passes the DCMA 14-point assessment. We can go ahead and run an analysis on it. So when I said that the tool is fast, this is 1,000 iterations of the Monte Carlo simulation. It's pretty fast. So just to give you an idea, I don't have a very, very fast computer, and I usually run P6 in the background. So it took about 15.15 or of a second to run this analysis 1,000 times. So the next thing you see here is that you've got all these items that turn red. So you've got all these items highlighted in red. So what this is showing you now is this is showing you the risk-adjusted critical path. So the criticality index over a certain threshold, which you can set in here. So this is saying that these particular items highlighted in red are going to be on their critical path 50% of the time or more. And why that's important Well, you can see here that you've got a deviation in your critical path. This just became on the critical, or has a higher likelihood of being on the critical path. So this may be a new thing that you may need to start managing as a project manager because of the risk and uncertainty that we've loaded into this particular model. So once we've run the initial run, we can go over here and we can start looking at different analysis used within the tool. You can see you drop down here. The first thing I like to show people is kind of the percentile view. So the percentile view is kind of looking at those different confidence levels associated with the project. You can see here that the green dot represents that baseline or planned start, and the blue dot here represents the planned finish of the project, and then the red bar here actually represents the risk-adjusted timeline. And what this is showing you at a P50 is that at a P50, we can see here that we're going to be about, let's see, current starts, that's about 6 months over the planned end date. You can also see here that it's 1.39 million. The cool thing about Polaris is that we actually hold all the simulation data within the model. So we can adjust things on here. So if I want to look at the P10, I can look at the cost associated with that. I can adjust up to the P90 and see where the cost is associated with that, the P50, etc. You can go through any one of these things and look at it. The next thing I can open up is that if I have a budget associated with it, I can look at the actual project cost at a particular confidence interval. So what this is that these orange bars are actually representing the risk-adjusted cost. So as I adjust that to a higher confidence level, so if I'm interested in the P90 risk-adjusted cost, I can look at this from a individual year perspective. The little black line here actually represents the project budget that's been loaded against this project. So this is a neat dashboard function for decision makers. So you can very quickly see that 2014 and 2015, we're going to probably run under budget. 2016, 2017, very high likelihood of running over budget. Even at a lower confidence level, you're still showing here that in 16 and 17, very much running over budget. So in the same view, going back to kind of that functionality I was talking about, this cost of delay functionality or liquidated damage. You can actually go through here and we can assign different rule sets. So this particular one has 2 rules associated with it, with the first gas milestone and the detailed engineering milestone. So these are just rule sets that we've set up that, if it violates a particular date, it's going to accrue costs at some sort of level. You can have a fixed cost, you can have a scaling cost. The cost can accrue at rates, at intervals of per day, per week, per month, per year, depending on what's been written into a contract or what you want to translate that information into, what it may, be as an additional exposure on your project. What's neat about this is that if you've loaded all the particular information in here associated with the budget, the baseline cost coming in from the project, you can look at, the deltas here then, where you have the risk-adjusted cost of, 1.93 million, as well as the additional cost of delay. Total cost is $2 million, and this is roughly what you're over budget at. So this is actually showing you, maybe in contingency at a P50, I need to carry $350,000 to make sure that, I'm covered for all the risk and possible liquidated damages that I might have to pay out as a contractor. Also, you could go up here, you could adjust up to a higher level. This really just goes into, how you want to manage your project and how risk adverse or, comfortable with risk that you are. So showing off some of the other functionality in here. A lot of the other things in here, you can look at the color view. The color view is kind of the same spin as the percentile view. This is kind of neat from a senior leadership perspective, and I like to take this up to the level 2 WBS. This is kind of just showing you how achievable your project and your project budget are. So it's saying, okay, my plan schedule is kind of sitting in this blue area. Well, that's in the 10% confidence level. Very, very low confidence that I'm probably going to meet schedule on this project. And as I go further and further out, that confidence level goes up. Where we'd like to see this is hypothetically over here, or really we like to see the higher confidence levels over here in that kind of intake here. Same thing with the budget. You can see here that very, very high confidence in meeting budget here, very, very high confidence in meeting budget here. But in 16 and 17, again, that have a very low confidence of actually meeting budget. And you can actually see out here that you may even have costs in 2018 if you're not careful. We do offer kind of the typical views that you would see in a risk analysis. You can look at the CDF, PDF views. What's really neat is that we kind of give you some different ways to slice and dice data differently. You can look at the scope from the full project. So this is showing you the different confidence intervals. So let's say you like to look at your P10, your P50, and your P90 end date, as well as you can see here that the plan value basically has about a 0% chance of making it. But you can see here you can compare these numbers very, very quickly. But what's nice is that we have different measures that you can jump to. So let's say this is end date. I want to look at the cost. Okay, so the total project cost. Here's my P10 project cost all the way up through my P90. You can see that my plan cost is basically has very low chance of making it. But what's really neat is that let's say I want to look at the cost of things through a particular milestone. So let's say I want to look at the cost through the end of engineering. So I can go through detailed engineering, or I'm sorry, through feed. Oh, I was right, detailed engineering. Well, I can see here that, looking at these different costs here, maybe my P50 through detailed engineering needs to be about $500,000. And my P90 needs to be 638. So this is neat from a project management perspective because you can actually start looking at where you think your costs are going to end up through a particular milestone. And you can go through, any one of these, or just at a higher level, what are my costs of installation going to be total? Here's where they are. We also look at cost of delay. So if we look at the total project, you can see what your liquidated damage exposure is from a total project perspective. We can also look at the typical ones, let's say just duration of the project, your duration. Lots of different measures in here. It's really nice because this allows you to kind of, look at this information very, very quickly. One of the things that we have that's just probably one of the really things that just blows people away is the ability to look at risk in days and dollars. So what's the impact? So we have a analysis feature called risk prioritization. What risk prioritization is, it's actually a simulation routine that goes through and says, okay, we have two different modes, but for the first one, I'll just explain single pass. And what single pass does, it says, let's say I'm interested in my risk cost at a 50% confidence interval. So I put that information in. What this is going to do is it's going to run the entire model and say, okay, at a P50, what is my total cost and total, schedule duration? It's then going to remove risk number one and rerun the analysis and compare the delta and say, this is what you could save if you could fully mitigate risk number one. It's going to put risk number one back into the analysis and remove risk number two. And it's going to go through that and remove each one of the risks and then tell you what the contribution is for each one of those risks. Our analysis engine is so fast it allows us to do this very, very rapidly. So what this actually does is that this is kind of a different spin on looking at risk versus looking at it from like a sensitivity analysis perspective. This actually is information you can give to a project manager and say, if you could fully mitigate risk number one, you could save 43 days of schedule and $80,000. Or you could say, maybe we need to mitigate this. It doesn't matter what it costs. We're going to spend $80,000 and we're going to get 43 days of schedule back. You can do a lot of different things. You can look at this and compare it at the P50, the P90, and you can run this analysis very, very rapidly. You can also export all this information. Everything in here is fully exportable from a chart data and image perspective. We export most of the data to a CSV file, so you can open it with Excel and do further manipulation or put into other reports. You can also put chart images together and if you want to put them into, like, say, a PowerPoint presentation. One of the things we really try to do with this tool, because it's so fast with things like this, is the fact that we can do real-time analysis in a room with decision makers. We can put all the information into the model. You can sit around a roundtable and have a roundtable discussion while doing this type of analysis. It really provides a different perspective on doing risk analysis. It also makes it a little bit more fun for the people involved in the room. They like to see kind of immediate results, and you can do that with this type of tool. The other mode that we have beyond single pass is iterative, and this is kind of a light optimization routine. And what this actually does is it goes through and says, okay, what order of risk should I remove in serial to get the most bang for my buck? In other words, saying, okay, it does 2 iterations of the single pass method. So it's saying, okay, I'm going to go through and I'm going to do the same thing I did in single pass and say, okay, risk number 6 is the top risk. It's going to remove risk number 6 and then do another single pass and say, what's the next risk that's contributing the most to my project? So this is actually going into, like I said, more of an optimization routine. Now, this gives you the same output as the single pass, as the 2 risks you should do. But what this is telling you even further is that you should remove risk number 6 first, and then you should remove risk number 1. And this is actually starting to take schedule construction into account. So if we fully remove this and we ran it, we've actually seen areas where this has been completely different. And they say, well, risk number 1 is no longer the top contributor after you mitigate risk number 6. It could be risk number 2 and 3. You can run multiple iterations for as many risks as you want to do. This is just running the model hundreds of thousands of times at this point, the more iterations you do. So some of the other functionality we have in here from a risk management perspective is that we can go through all the different analysis features. Like I said, we also have the sensitivity analysis, very, very detailed. You can look at the project for duration, cost, sensitivity. For those of you that have done risk analysis, a lot of these measures probably look very, very familiar. We also allow you to do different things at subtasks. So if you want to look at just a particular area of the schedule, you can look at the top things for, say, duration sensitivity, what's driving duration for fabrication, what's driving duration for installation. We can also look at, let's say, what's driving it through a particular milestone. So if I want to see the top drivers for duration through first gas, I can very, very quickly see what that, what those different tasks are that are driving that, or consequently if there's cost. For this particular one, there isn't. You can look at this at different periods. It's really neat what you can do with this. I mean, you can do lots of different things from a like a project perspective. So like, let's say I want to go and do the subtasks, and let's go to procurement. Oops. And I want to look at cost sensitivity for just 2015. So I can look and see at just year 2015, what are the top subtasks for fabrication that are driving costs in 2015. This is just a really cool feature. You can see this very, very quickly as a project manager. 2015, these are the costs I want to look at. These are the order I need to manage them. And so from that perspective, going into more of the risk management way and how we would like to do risk management, we like to go through and we want to do, first go through and do the initial analysis. Then we want to go through and do, mitigation options. Recently, we added some new functionality in here, which allows you to do different risk mitigation scenarios. So it's kind of like basically mitigation scenario modeling. And by doing that, you can come through, you can look at the baseline. So this is kind of the initial risk register that you brought into the tool. We can go through and we could say, I want to look at mitigation 1. You can change these names if you want to, but for this particular demo, I'm just going to show you this real quick. Turn on the mitigation. We can come in here and we can change these features. So like, let's say that I know that engineering resources may be lacking. We've gone through, we've said, okay, we can lower this probability because we're going to spend some money to do, we're going to add additional resources. So I know that I can spend another $5,000, and we'll go down here and put cash. This actually is allowing you to affect these particular tasks, this risk, and we're lowering the probability, but we're adding an additional cost. So this is allowing you to actually look at costs associated with the mitigations and modeling that. So if I go through here, and I'm just going to change a couple of these. So we've gone through and we've done our due diligence by going through and having a discussion about how we want to do mitigation. And we can add cash. We'll lower this one too to, let's say, 10%. So what's really neat here is that we can go say, okay, I want to look at the baseline information, and I want to go to my scenario modeling. And this is a distribution analyzer. So we can go ahead and hit run, and this is going to run that first scenario that we had set up. And let's say I just want to add this top task. So this is looking at the entire project for end date and cost. So I've now added these two things, showing you what the total cost is for the project. And I can look at these at different confidence intervals or the different intervals I want to look at. So let's say I'm interested in 50 and 70. After that, I can actually go back to the risks and turn on the first mitigation option. And I can rerun this. Okay, back to scenario modeling. Go back to the end date. And I can add another one. And this is mitigated. So you can actually look at the deltas now. You can say, okay, here's the end date difference. I can look at here and say the original is that, and I can look at the P50. I can see that my mitigation options have saved me a couple weeks here at the P50, saved me about 3 weeks here, or almost a month here at the P70. I can do the same thing for cost. So I can look at costs, I can add another task, and come in here and edit this. And I can see the different changes in cost here. It hasn't saved me a lot of money, but it has saved me a little bit for schedule. You can export all this information. This is a neat way to kind of just, compare the different mitigation strategies that you're doing. You can look at them, kind of run different scenarios in here. You can run pretty much the different things you want. From that perspective, if we go back to kind of the standard view, we do offer a couple other things within the tool. You can open up the task details pane, which is you're going to find more information about the individual tasks. Going through here, you'll find the uncertainty information. If there's risk associated with that particular task, it'll show up in here. So let's see if I can find one. Yeah, there you go. So here's the risk. If you wanted to assign a budget to a particular task, you could do that. So you can actually look at the cost base and view at a task level if you want to. And we also offer a light scheduling function if you want to come in and change some information about the particular task, if you want to run some mitigation scenarios. You can come in here and change information about the task, add predecessors. If you wanted to do some probabilistic branching, you could do that in here as well. So from that perspective, there's a lot of things you can do within the tool to play what-if scenarios. You can do lots of things around risk mitigation. All in all, it's a really powerful tool that gives decision makers a lot of information at their fingertips. You can really, from the what-if scenarios, some of the things that we've done in risk workshops, like I said, the conversations you're going to have with this tool and the ability to do real-time analysis in the room with it is huge. Like, you're going to be able to have conversations with decision makers. You're going to be able to make changes to the model on the fly and kind of show them the results of those decisions in the room with them. And that's just a huge benefit. It's kind of a huge step forward with from legacy tools. So I do want to show you, there are some different ways that we can get the tool. We do offer a 30-day free trial license. You can download it here at boozallen.com/Polaris. If you have further questions, we're more than happy to do a WebEx demo. We can show you how it works. We can give you some basics on how to integrate different things from your different project controls functions. We also offer software licenses. We sell this as a cost software. Sorry, I can make that a little bit bigger. All the licenses are perpetual. So when you buy the license, it's yours. The first year of maintenance and upgrades is included with that cost. Per seat license is about $5,000, so it's very, very competitive with other tools on the market. The big thing is that we're a consulting company first. We are very, very familiar with using the software and we built it, but we also use it on day-to-day projects. I mean, we have about 600 different analysts across the company using this software on multiple different projects. I'm not sure how many different clients we have off the top of my head. We have probably well over 300 plus, I think that's about right, external users using the software on a day-to-day project. We also provide training and different types, and we also team with Hewlett & Associates, who literally has wrote the book on integrated cost and schedule risk analysis. Dr. Hewlett comes out and teaches this as a part of his course. I believe like I said, he'll be over at ICEA next week. We team with him pretty heavily for training, but we also offer our services as well. So there's lots of different ways that you can get the tool. We also offer, of course, consulting if you'd be interested in that as well. So from there, I have about 19 minutes left, and I know this is a lot of information, especially if it's the first time you've ever seen a risk analysis tool. More than happy to try and answer questions as they come up. And I'll try and open up the questions tab.
I'll take care of it, Kai, don't you worry.
Okay.
The first set of questions, looks like, is coming from Russell Tarver. Hang on one moment, Russell. Let me unmute you. Russell?
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
Hi. You're
Hello
on
there.
there.
Thank you. Hi. Just going back, find out what my question. Remember what my question was. Very simple question. Just when you're using much larger schedules, large risk registers, lots of cost information, how does that affect performance, the speed of processing?
So actually, we have a client who, to give you some real numbers, they have a 8,000-line multi-project P6 file. They load down with 250 plus risks with well north of 400 impacts to the schedule. It runs in about 45 seconds.
Okay.
So it does make a little bit of a difference. The larger the schedule, the more risks you have. And also the flip side too is how much memory you're running on the computer. My computer runs about 8 gigs of RAM. The more powerful computer, the faster it's going to go. From a performance perspective, to give you one of our competitors, similar tool, it took them about 45 minutes to an hour to do the analysis. So it's an order of magnitude faster.
Okay. Great, thank you. I had a second question, if I can go ahead with that. Oh yes, it was around the projects I work on. We often, if you're importing from P6 every month, can you do a kind of a schedule update function without having to rebuild your whole model?
Absolutely. So we have a
Yeah.
functionality called merge. So what you can do is you can import an entire new schedule, and then you can merge data from past projects. So if you say you've had just a schedule update, they've had some progress. Polaris will take project process into account. So if you have activities that have finished, if there's risk associated with that, it doesn't take that into account. But you can pull lots of different information from the project data. You can pull anything you put into the model from past models into the new model by just using this merge functionality, and it'll bring all that data over very, very quickly.
Great. And sorry, slight technical question. Is that using the schedule unique ID from P6 to do that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So if you make changes to the UID, you might have some challenges there.
Yeah. Yeah. More than one.
Yeah, and there's
well, I mean, you'd have problems anyway if you're doing that.
Yeah, so there's workarounds for that. We have some clients that have had some challenges with that in the past, so it's something that we're very used to working with. So I mean, if there's a particular issue you have, we can definitely figure it out.
Okay, that's fair enough. Okay, thank you very much.
You're all set, Russell?
Yeah, thank you very much.
I'm going to switch back off. Hold on. I don't see any other questions coming in, so let's just pause for a minute. I'm going to also unmute Michael Arthur, who was one of our panelists, in case, Michael, you want to say anything?
Thanks. I guess just give people a minute or two to formulate questions. We've got plenty of time here, so we'd love to see how we can help you guys.
Well, I'm glad Kai was mentioning the conference, because I can see from the attendee list that there's a bunch of folks that we're seeing in San Diego next week. Looking forward to that. Well, I guess this is a sign you did a very good job.
Well, let's see, I do have one other screen to show up. Here's our contact information. I'm the product manager over the tool. Graham Gilmer is our program manager, and Michael Arthur is our director of business development. Please feel free to email us, give us a phone call if you have any questions. If you're interested in a demo, if you're interested in piloting the software, just please let us know, and we will do anything we can to help you out.